Dated, bruh. That's dated, bruh. I'm live. I'm live. I'm live. I'm still alive. Oh, yeah. Hey, I'm still alive. Oh, yeah. I'm still alive. I done gone live. Welcome. Last week was kind of a fucking bust. I got a total headache while reading, which is not a good proposition. Which is not just not a good thing to fucking happen. That's just a pain in the it's a total pain in the ass if that kind of thing's happening. That thing's gonna be fucking you up. That is gonna be screwing your life up. Today we have the wonderful. Let me go to this side. Wonderful. Oh, you can't see my arm. Fucking puppy cam up here. Also, yes, you can tell by the my arm leaving that green screen is back. That means I've decided to move into my library where, keep all these illustrious books and such and things. What's this saying? What's this saying? Better not be telling me it ain't doing good. Shut up. Error. Come on, man. You're a liar. You're a liar. Jambalaya, bro. That's all I have to say. Jambalaya. You're a jambalaya. Yeah. The Gremlins. Steven Spielberg presents The Gremlins, a novel by George Gipe, based on a screenplay written by Chris Columbus, a major motion picture from Warner Brothers. Yeah, boy! This book has been fucking awesome so far. Yeah. You wouldn't. I would. It's my entire shtick is movies on book. I would know that these books are going to be amazing. They're going to maybe blow your mind. They're maybe going to give you something look forward to on your Mondays. A little something to take your mind off after a hard fucking Monday. Mondays. Ugh. Yeah. I wanted to also enjoy a movie after this, but I cannot figure that all out. That's too much to ask me. Maybe later on this week. Right now I am going through this little box set. The Herschel Gordon Lewis Feast. It's doing something really awesome with the green screen right now. You can tell. Oh my god, that looks amazing. But 14 Herschel Gordon Lewis movies. Boom. Talking about these. Doing my little thing. Gonna viewing those bastards, and yeah. I don't know. We'll see. We'll just see what fucking happens. I'm probably swearing a little bit too much to be like my PG-13, right? Don't get mad at me, YouTube, please. Saying bad words. I'm just talking, talking out my booty. Yeah, I got a little bit of tea, the minty type, to hopefully help with my voice. Hopefully help enunciate and let y'all know, you know, all the good things that's going on in the story. Hey, Julie, what's up, my friend? Welcome. I got the dog cam. Oh, I'm trying to do it again. Trying to do the opposite thing. Dog cam. Just to let you know they're not a picture. Furiosa. Fury. Yeah, they're still alive. Yep. They're still there. They're like, what the hell you want, Dad? We just gonna be cute. They're very precious dogs. It's like a living art of above my beautiful fireplace in this beautiful library. How wonderful. All right. So I think I've officially bullshitted my way through every bit of intro I could possibly. Yeah, last week was a total bust. I was just Long day of work. Long day of lack of work, actually. That's what it was. Yeah, it was an okay day. Went in early and got a couple things done for a couple hours. You know, uh, and it was just like, brain just wasn't working. Wasn't having a thing. Thanks, Julie. Yes. Welcome. Welcome to the masterpiece Movies on Book Theater. Here, we're going to present to you alternate style timelines of things and stuff. Got my big comfy chair here, my big leather chair, and my many tomes of leather bound books around me. Let me grab one of my favorites. Gremlins by George Guype. All right, here we are at chapter 13. That's enough bullshitting. Let's get straight down to the meat of it. I am going to just like completely redo what I did last week because I just, fuck it. We're just going to delete that. This is going to be part 4. This is the real part 4. And if you're confused about what's going on by this, don't be. Don't worry about it. Just pick up after part 3 and indulge yourself in just a great time in a wonderful story. Wonderful storytelling going on here by George Guype. All right, without further ado, chapter 13. Usually, Pete Fontaine cannot think of even one reason to be happy. Being 13, of course, he took such things as good health and plenty of food for granted, scoffing at his parents when they offered those everyday blessings as reasons for quiet celebration. No, Pete wanted more sensational and immediate reasons to be happy, and today he had not 1 or 2, but 3. First of all, it was the last day of school until after New Year's, which translated into no homework, no boring classes, and plenty of morning sleep. Secondly, it was his last day as a Christmas tree, a chore he had enjoyed when he was 8, but now found so irksome he started dreading it in September. That meant that after this evening, he had at least 9 months before the aggravations started building again. Third, and most important, he had called Marianne Fabrizio last night and laid the groundwork for his first major league date. True, he had not actually proposed a time and activity, but he had been on the verge several times, and she seemed interested in his conversation. Strolling towards school, nearly 12 hours later, he would recall entire passages of their lengthy talk. Replaying segments now, he was disappointed to note that he had passed up many excellent opportunities for jokes, suave observations, and date suggestions. But so what? All he had to do was run the soundtrack through his mind once again as he walked and added the appropriate wise, clever, or bold comments. And while he was at it, he could add new lines for Marianne, most of them expressions of amazement at how she had somehow managed to overlook his tiger of a young man for so long. Becoming so caught up in the imaginary dialogue, Pete did not hear the footsteps behind him. Only when a new voice entered the scene did he snap back to reality. "Hope I'm not butting into private conversation," the voice said. It was Mr. Hanson. His eyes were bloodshot, and he walked without his usual springy step, Pete noted. "Hi," he said. He was, of course, doubly embarrassed. It was bad enough that Mr. Hanson had overheard him talking to him. Now, as he fell into step with Pete, he was going to subject him to possible execration by his classmates for fraternizing with the teacher. Short of being impolite or breaking into a sprint, however, there was little Pete could do. "I'm rehearsing my spiel as a Christmas tree," he explained, pleased that he had come up with something so quickly. "Every year, I dress up as a Christmas tree and help my father sell them." "Oh, yeah?" Hanson smiled. "I think I've seen you, although I didn't know who it was under all those decorations. Boy, you get lit up more than the town drunk, I'll bet." "Yes, sir," Pete said, forcing himself to chuckle. He wondered how many times he had heard that one since he first put on the portable lights and tinsel. The other favorite wisecrack dealt with Pete's needling people.
Heard anything from Billy?
Hansen asked.
I guess he's curious to know what I found out about that little animal he left here.
Yes, sir. Yesterday, he was going to call you right after Christmas.
It might take a lot longer than that to solve this biological mystery. Those little furry things may seem simple enough, but so far they've defied classification. They look like mammals, and sometimes they act like reptiles, but they aren't either, at least not in the classic sense.
Has it grown any?
Pete asked.
Not that I've noticed. Why not drop in a minute and see for yourself?
Pete nodded, not sure how to say no, and he was curious to see the Mogwai again. When they entered Mr. Hansen's classroom and were free from the prying eyes of other students, Pete was somewhat relieved. Warmed by the school's steam heat, he pulled off his gloves and began unbuttoning his coat as he followed Mr. Hansen through the classroom and into the spacious lab immediately behind it.
Good Lord!
Pete's field of vision was suddenly obscured by the broad back and shoulders of Hansen, who, after taking a couple of steps into the lab, was propelled backwards as if struck by a flying object.
What?
Pete heard himself calling out, throwing up his hands to ward off colliding with Mr. Hansen. Recovering his balance quickly, Hansen steadied Pete by grabbing his shoulders, then turned and ran into the lab towards a green object tucked in the far corner. Pete followed. From a distance, the object resembled a slimy watermelon, spherical in shape rather than ovate, its skin covered and matted with a layer of sticky, veiny paste. Several strands of the wire cage, in which it had obviously been encased, were broken or bent outward by the heavy, pulpy mass. A faint crackling noise, like saliva being sucked through the teeth, emanated from the general area of the object, as the running sore that was its outer skin changed shape and texture, even as Pete and Hansen watched.
Wow!
Pete gasped.
Did it used to be that little animal? When did this happen?
Last night,
Hansen murmured. As he spoke, he began searching in a nearby tool drawer, presently locating a set of wire cutters, with which he snipped away the remaining wires of the cage.
Why are you letting it loose?
Pete asked, looking towards the nearest way out of the lab.
I wouldn't.
I don't want it to be destroyed or damaged by the wires,
Hansen replied evenly.
There's not much danger to us now, I suspect. It's in some sort of pupal stage.
Fascinated by the hideous pod, he could not restrain himself from reaching out to touch it. He immediately pulled his finger back, looked a moment at the gooey substance stuck to the end of it.
Yuck!
He said. Seeing that was about to rub his finger on his trouser, Hansen tossed Pete an old rag.
Use this,
he said.
Thanks. Boy, it really sticks,
Pete muttered, thankful that he had not used his pants as a receptacle for the gunk. He watched as Mr. Hansen circled the remains of the exploded cage, studying the monstrous green gooey ball from all angles.
What did you say this was?
What did you say this was?
He asked.
A putrid stage?
Pupil stage,
Hansen replied.
Like a student in school?
No, Hansen said, although it comes from the Latin pupus, meaning boy.
The pupil stage is the quiescent period in the development of an insect, following the larval and preceding the adult stage. Inside, this is going through a stage.
Like my mother?
Pete smiled. The short period of familiarity with the object had already lessened many of his fears. Hansen smiled slightly.
No, that's different, he explained. This is what we call a metamorphosis. A change in form. Change in appearance.
Yeah, like my mother.
Hansen made a note on a clipboard, then suddenly dropped the pencil and snapped his fingers.
Billy,
he said, his voice tinged with alarm. Do you know his phone number?
Sure,
Pete said.
Why?
Because, Hansen replied. It just occurred to me that if we've got one of these things, and it's kind of spooky, I wonder how he feels with 4. All he could remember was the line from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Where did they come from? Billy was still staring at the 4 faintly bubbling pustules, weighing whether he should try to slide quietly between them or make a mad dash for it, when the telephone rang. Almost grateful for the interruption, he grabbed the receiver so quickly the rest of the phone fell noisily onto the floor. He let it lie. Hello?
Billy Peltzer?
Yes?
This is Roy Hansen. Something's developed here at the school lab.
Yeah, it has here, too.
Your 4 Mogwai have entered the pupal stage?
I don't know what it's called. Hansen quickly described the mass in front of him until he was satisfied Billy had 4 the same.
They must go into this metamorphosis after a certain amount of time,
Hansen theorized.
That's the only explanation I can give for what's happening.
Did you feed yours after midnight last night?
Billy asked.
Yes, now that you mention it, is there anything unusual about that?
Pete didn't tell you about feeding them.
No.
Well, the Chinese boy warned us not to feed them after midnight,
Billy said.
Pete was supposed to tell you that, but I guess he forgot.
Did you feed yours?
Hansen asked.
Yes, sir. It was a mistake. Somehow the cord of my electric clock got pulled out of the wall. Maybe they did it. Anyway, I thought it was only 11:40, so I fed them something. But I didn't feed Gizmo. Now Gizmo's the same, and the other 4 are sitting there like they were getting ready to explode or attack.
I seriously doubt that'll happen,
Hansen assured him.
They may be making little noises, but that's part of the hatching process. In a couple of days, they'll probably turn into some life form that we've never seen before.
I can hardly wait,
Billy groaned. Then he asked,
when is this likely to happen?
No idea.
Is it all right for me to go to work and leave them? This is going to be a really busy day, but I don't want to leave Mom alone if there's any danger.
I'm sure we have some time, Hansen replied. Anyway, show her what happened, so she'll be ready to run if those cocoons produce something horrible, and keep them locked in a place where they can't get out.
Billy looked at the vegetating masses.
There's no way these things could produce anything but monsters,
he said direly.
Don't be so sure, Hansen murmured. Remember the butterfly? Let's keep in touch the rest of the day, okay?
Yes, sir.
Billy hung up and finished dressing, all the while watching his new roommates. Gizmo, meanwhile, continued to chatter away, his intonation a mixture of alarm and castigation.
Don't worry,
Billy soothed.
I won't leave you alone with those things.
Lifting Gizmo from his cage and putting him in an old knapsack he found stuffed in the corner of a closet, Billy gingerly picked his way through the field of giant blisters. Arriving at the bedroom door, he remembered a disquieting fact about the locking mechanism. The door could be locked only from the inside. True, the catch could be turned before leaving and the door closed, but then you couldn't get back in without breaking the lock. Closing the door but not locking it, he went downstairs. His mother was in the kitchen, going about her everyday business of making his breakfast, looking for all the world as if there was just another pleasant day. For her, of course, that was exactly the case. Billy filled her in quickly, watching her expression change from mildly alarmed to briefly amused, and finally to properly horrified.
I'd like to see those things,
she said when he was finished. Following him upstairs, she gasped as she saw the floor globs, then stood shaking her head sadly for a long time.
The rug is ruined,
she murmured.
Is that all you can say?
Billy demanded, startled by her composure.
There's probably a monster inside every one of those pods, and you're worried about the rug.
It's a front, she said. Of course I'm terrified that those things are in my house, but until we find out what they are, there's not much we can do but watch. That'll be my assignment for the day. You go to work.
All right, but I think we should lock the door,
Billy replied.
Don't be silly. How will you get in then? we'd have to break the lock. Mom, listen, Billy said firmly. I'm not leaving the house if that door isn't locked. Oh, go on. I'll be all right. Lynn couldn't help but smiling, though, At his concern for her. Billy shook his head, started to reach for the latch. Come on, Lynn said, grabbing his hand. You'll be late, and jobs are hard to get these days. Then she added that she hoped was a convincing Philip, especially jobs where you work right next to somebody like Kate Barringer. It didn't work. I'm not going to the bank until that door is locked, Billy said resolutely. Father won't like paying the locksmith. We have to get in again. But he'll like it if you're still alive, Billy countered. Shrugging, Lynn turned the knob to the lock position and pulled the door closed. Billy tested it, nodded. As they walked downstairs, Billy still carrying Gizmo in the knapsack. Lynn could not resist adding an infelicious thought. Suppose, he said, just suppose that whatever pops out of those pressure cookers is not only a monster, but a monster with a pretty fair intelligence. Billy looked at her blankly. What I mean is, if they're smart, Lynn continued, won't they be able to figure out how to turn the latch and just walk out the door? Billy sighed. What she'd said had some merit, of course, but he really didn't want to think about it. If they're that smart, Mom, he said, I figure there's nothing the human race can do but learn how to surrender. What up, Andrew? Welcome. Thanks for the love, my friend. Get a little bit of drink. We're going to continue on chapter 14, my friends. Chapter 14. That warm mint medley. That's some delicious freaking shit. Play on. Welcome, my friend. Welcome. Yeah. You just came here just in time for chapter 14. And to see these cute little dogs. I keep fucking pointing the wrong side. See, I'm not used to this being all reversed and whatnot. I'm like literally left on that side of me. I'm like pointing towards these dogs and it just ain't fucking working. Chapter 14. It was Friday, the day before Christmas Eve, and throughout Kingston Falls, the holiday buildup reached a crest, causing lethargy in some and hyperactivity in others. In school, youngsters squirmed in their seats, as resistant to instruction as a cat to sarcasm. Workers not under siege by last-minute shoppers went about their jobs in a desultory manner, like dieters approaching a plate of steamed carrots. In the shopping areas, it was a different matter, however, as the lazy or super efficient or guilt-ridden began their final sorties on the gift shops and department stores. Watching them carefully during the holiday season, one might have noticed a marked change in their attitude as the days clicked off before Christmas. Friendly, even jovial and outgoing at the beginning, now as the final shopping days approached, they resembled fierce, dedicated soldiers, or in some case, zombies programmed to perform a specific task regardless of the obstacle. Driven by desperation/determination, ferret out those last few presents, their eyes focused only on their goal, like a plane or ship moving through dense fog or dead of night. Each was an isolated pulse of life surrounded by a vacuum. The only beacon ahead or to the side was the gift, a special something that would bring a smile of delight to a person who had everything, convince Herbie the kid, who started looking forward to Christmas in February, that he need never fear disappointment again, or, best of all, provided the equalizing element so that no one would feel cheated. A cold wind, harbinger of more snow, whipped through Kingston Falls, knocking askew and then loose an S on the marquee of the Colony Theater, which then proclaimed as the main attraction, now White and the Seven Dwarfs.
No one noticed. Or if they did, they couldn't bother with a second glance. It was, after all, a time of important decision-making. In the town square, Pete Fontaine Sr., seller of Christmas trees, trembled in the cold as he realized that once again he was nearing the point of no return. How much longer could he keep the prices sky high? It depended, of course, on how many desperate people there still were. People had waited this long and were afraid to wait long. From this point on in the day, both sides knew it was a battle of wills to see who could weaken first. As often as he had played the game, Pete Sr. could never predict how it would turn out. 3 years ago, he had kept prices high to the end and been rewarded with the rash of late, albeit angry buyers. 2 years ago, he had kept the prices high and been stuck with hundreds of trees. Last year, he had lowered the prices early and still gotten stuck. Pumping his arms to warm himself, he watched Father Bartlett stop at the corner mailbox and carefully drop in several stacks of greeting cards. Did he actually expect them to be delivered in time for Christmas? Of course not. Pete Sr. chuckled. He knew that the cards, one and all, were addressed to those left off Father Bartlett's mailing list, who had surprised him with cards. Pete Sr. wished he could be as busy as the bank across the way. A constant flow of people went in and out of that building. For if Christmas was the very life of the holiday season, the bank was the heart. Nearby, in their worn patrol car, Sheriff Riley and Deputy Brent, guardians of the town square, sat and watched to make sure no one's holiday was marred by a bank heist, a fist fight over a present, or a fender battle over a parking space. Inside the mercantile chamber, which pumped signatures on one paper one way and cash the other, Billy and 3 other tellers worked as fast as they could. Nevertheless, the population of Kingston Falls had never seemed so large or single-minded. From the first minute after opening, a steady stream of customers, which snaked through the line marked by velvet cords, had been backed up nearly to the doorway. Billy didn't mind the work. In fact, he preferred having something to occupy his mind, instead of worrying about those pods in his home. Only the fact that his mother was a very sensible, strong person, who had promised to leave at the first hint of trouble, kept his nervousness to a minimum. During several brief breaks in the banking action, he'd attempted to tell Kate what had happened, but he had probably sounded incoherent. Having Gerald Hopkins standing nearby, watching for the first error he made, didn't help his composure. Nor did the appearance of Mrs. Deagle, that fucking bitch. I added that. It doesn't say that fucking. Although it would be fucking. Watching her pause a moment after entering the bank, Billy knew she was going to head straight for his window, and for a few seconds it appeared that was her destination. Then, veering away from him, he caused him to exhale with relief as she pushed her way past the next customer, heading for Kate's window. "Help you, Mrs. Deagle?" he heard Kate ask, ostensibly friendly, but cold underneath. I mean, hard to do girls' voices. I mean, lady voices.
Yes, dearie,
Mrs. Deagle crooned.
I understand you've been circulating a petition trying to prevent me from closing that saloon you work in.
If this is a personal matter, it might be better to discuss it after business hours, Kate replied.
This is a personal business matter,
Mrs. Deagle shot back.
I always mix business with pleasure, and now it gives me a great deal of pleasure to tell you that your petition is useless. As soon as the holidays are over, I'm selling 104 properties to the Hittox Chemical Corporation.
Just as I suspected, Kate smiled.
Just as you suspected, but are powerless to prevent. As you no doubt realize, as a result of your snooping, your own home is one of those properties, and so is that saloon. After the first of the year, I'll sign the deal, and all of you will have 90 days to get out. What do you think of that?
I guess there's nothing I can say, Kate murmured.
It's just the kind of a Christmas present I can see you giving.
I'll thank you not to be impertinent, young lady.
Kate opened her mouth, as if to respond, but in a split second changed her mind. Instead, she spoke gently. Mrs. Deagle, you're going to hurt a lot of good people. My folks can afford to move, but some of the people you're forcing out just don't have the money to buy a new place. Isn't there any way we can prevail upon you to change your mind?
You have 2 chances,
Mrs. Deagle said, smiling wickedly.
none and less than none. And now, if you'll deposit this check, I'll be on my way.
Billy looked at Kate. For one of the few times since he had met her, he seemed truly hurt and at a loss for words. His exact act was impulsive and certainly reckless. Spotting a broom tucked underneath the counter, he grabbed it and pushed it through the opening in front of him towards Mrs. Deagle.
What's that?
She mumbled huffily, drawing back as if he meant to strike her.
It's a broom,
Billy answered.
What do you want me to do with it?
I thought you might need a ride home, he said. Mrs. Deagle's eyes widened as several customers in the near vicinity began to chuckle. Leaving her holding the broom, Billy took the deposit slip in front of him and began to work on it, all the while sneaking a glance at both Mrs. Deagle and Kate. The old woman was furious and seemed ready to explode. Kate, on the other hand, could not suppress a smile. Billy was not sure what was going to happen next, but he was certain that, whatever the outcome, brightening Kate's day made it worth it. It is a lot to try and read a bunch of stuff and do all that fun stuff. Preoccupied with the object in his laboratory and exhausted from his long hours of research, Roy Hansen was as anxious to get through the day as his students, who were already restless to get into the new snow. Despairing of getting their attention with usual teaching methods or subject matter, too stubborn to just let them sit and study or talk, he decided to review their study of the brain, in the hope a little material would stick with someone. Before him on his desk was a colorful electronic model of the human brain, with various sections that flashed on and off, weighing close to 100. Wait, let me fix this real quick. Hey, do you guys like this? Do you like it? That's it. Fall asleep to this if you like to. Mic check 1 2. Yeah, we're fixed. We're fixed back up. I can't read upside down though. I can, but it would take me like twice the amount of fucking time. Okay. All right. I think we're better. I think we're good. I think we got this. I think we got this. Weighing close to 100 pounds, it was a splendid instructional tool, and a shame to waste on such a lost cause of a day. Hansen had little choice, however, so he plunged ahead.
Anybody know what we call this?
He asked, pointing to the lit portion of the brain. Sorry to creep you out, Julie. Not trying to. No one answered.
Chucky?
Hansen said, nodding towards a chubby, oversized youth with prominent teeth.
The crouton?
Chucky murmured.
The crouton,
Hansen repeated, rolling his eyes.
Get them in my Caesar salad all the time. Any other guesses?
Samantha Wheeler, the smartest student in the class, caught his eye.
Thalamus,
she said confidently. Close,
But I'll get another doctor to do my brain surgery, he replied. It's the medulla oblongata. Then his irritation began to show. He said, What is it with you kids? I mean, look at this thing. When I was your age, I was learning this stuff from old books. You people have something out of Star Trek, and you still can't learn it. He glared at them. They in turn avoided his glance. And in the grim silence that followed, a wet pop, like a piece of ripe fruit splitting, like a piece of ripe fruit splitting, could be heard very distinctly. It came from the lab. Hansen decided to ignore it, but when it happened again, he knew he would have to investigate. Open your books to page 137 and study the brain glossary. I want everybody to know it. As he stood up to go to the lab, his gaze met that of Pete Fontaine. That's right, Pete, he thought. I believe its time has come. Looking nervously at his watch, he strode smartly out of the classroom, reading a silent prayer his chastised students would not hear their tough teacher scream for help a moment later. Gizmo put his ear against the bedroom door and listened carefully for the 10th time since he had left the knapsack's safety in favor of keeping watch. Too bad Billy's mother didn't share his concern, he thought. Oh, she made periodic trips into the hallway to see if anything dramatic had happened, but otherwise she seemed to go about her business as usual, answering the telephone and chatting in a completely normal way. If she was worried, she managed to hide it quite well, looking good-naturedly at Gizmo as he crouched near the flower stand just outside Billy's room. There was no way she could have known that was likely to happen in a matter of minutes or hours. Nevertheless, it maddened Gizmo to see how these Earthlings had adapted to living in the shadow of disaster. Blast Mogtermen! If he had made them able to communicate as well as most other animals, Gizmo would have been able to tell them that their best course of action was to burn the Peltzer house. Yes, it sounded terrible, but it was the only way. Bright fire, paralyzing with visual pain even as it destroyed. Otherwise... Oh no! The sound of her voice, low and plaintive, interrupted... Oh no! The sound of her voice, low and plaintive, interrupted Gizmo's fatalistic chain of thought. Yet the sadness in Lynn's tone gave him hope that she had come to the realization that drastic action must be taken. Hurrying back downstairs, he moved through the dining room and stopped just at the edge of the kitchen, where she was talking on the phone. Listening to her was really not eavesdropping in the strictest sense, as he did not understand every word these people said. Rather, he usually got a sense of what they were talking about, or what he knew immediately. She was involved in a personal matter, distressing but not life-threatening. But Rand, honey, he said, sighing, we're expecting you tonight. At the other end of the line, standing in the middle of a frenzied convention room, Rand Peltzer tried not to be distracted by the parade of robots, bizarre mechanical toys, and noisy salespeople who moved back and forth. I know, honey, he said, but they've closed most of the roads, at least the main ones, and the ones that are open, they're so treacherous. But I promise if it clears a little, I'll try to drive home. Okay, Lynn murmured. Just be careful. I mean, we've never spent a Christmas apart. Yeah, how's everything there? Lynn hesitated, but only briefly, deciding in a split second that it would not be good to tell him about the things that were upstairs. He was a terrible driver on snow and ice, and if you were in a hurry... Fine, he replied. Billy went to work, and I'm sitting here with Gizmo. See you soon, then.
Bye, honey, Lynn said, and hung up.
Bye.
Hello, Billy said, getting an urgent telephone call at work, especially on this day and under his present circumstances, made Billy nervous for several reasons. He was, first of all, concerned that his mother was in some sort of danger. Nor was he made comfortable by Gerald Hopkins hanging around after he gave him the receiver, expecting, no doubt, at least a death in the family for the call to be legitimate. Finally, the dust from the battle with Mrs. Deagle had barely settled, and he was still the center of attention for most eyes on the bank. Under the magnifying glass, he found it difficult to compose himself, and his hand shook when he lifted the receiver to his mouth. "It hatched," the voice in the other end said. Wait. Oh, it's Roy Hand. That one's Roy.
It hatched.
The voice the other hen said, startling him with its succinctness. Startling him with its succinctness. What?
I said it just hatched,
Roy Hansen said at the other end of the line. What? What is it? Billy stammered.
Hard to say right now. Why don't you come by and have a look? It's almost time for you to quit, isn't it?
Yes, Billy replied. But listen, I'll have to call home first and find out what's happened there.
Sure, I'll be here.
Listen, Mr. Hanson, you don't think it's dangerous, do you? Billy asked, aware that several sets of eyes were on him.
Well, it's no butterfly, Hanson replied. I can tell you that.
I'm going to call home first, Billy said. And if everything's all right there, I'll drop by.
Good. See you in a while, then. I hope.
Billy hung up, dialed his home phone number. When his mother answered, he spoke quickly and decisively. Listen carefully, he said. Mr. Hanson at the school just called to tell me the mogwai came out of its pod, so ours probably aren't far behind. Can you go upstairs and see what's happened with them? How can I? Lynn demanded. You made me lock the door from the inside. Billy had forgotten that. Then go up and put your ear to the door. You'll be able to hear if anything's moving around. All right. Shall I call you back? I'll wait, Billy said. Hopkins and Mr. Corbin were staring at it, not to mention Mrs. Deagle, but he was too agitated about the latest mogwai development to care. A minute later, his mother picked up the receiver. All quiet, she said. Good. I'll be home soon. I'm leaving now, but I thought I'd make a pass by school first. Maybe Mr. Hanson will know more by then, or be able to give me some advice on how to deal with these new critters. Okay. I'll be careful. When's Dad coming home? Not until later. Been held up by the snow. Oh. Well, bye. Billy hung up and then went to close his window and reached for his jacket. Sorry, Mr. Corbin, said to his boss, who watched him with quizzical expression. There's a small emergency at home, and I've got to take care of it. Wait just a moment, Wait just a moment, Mrs. Deagle said, emerging from the background to assert herself. This man was impertinent, and I demand you fire him. Mr. Corbin can fire me later, Billy said. And he will. The voices Mrs. Deagle called after raced for the front door. About to get to some gremlins. I need a little sleep. They rough on my voice. Look-see.
Let's have a look, see what's going on.
It's in here. Hey guys. All my friends.
Welcome.
Sorry, because it's hard to reach the mouse from feather bed. Shit. Never mind. That didn't happen. You didn't see that happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Cena.
More asthma. Stripe thought at first
His consciousness started to return, and while sleeping, he had slipped his head beneath one of the heavy rugs in Billy's room. But he soon realized that it wasn't just his head that was immobilized in some foreign environment. His entire being seemed to be in a state. Nice little crack right there. Man, I fucking lost where I was. His entire being seemed to be in a state of suspended animation. What did you fucking write?
You see me? I see you. I see you, P.
His entire being. Why am I cracking at that spot? His entire being. His entire being seemed to be in a state of suspended animation. Right? Even when I tried not to fucking crack, I still fucking cracked. Try as he might, he could see nothing but the filamentous curtain, as if he were packed past his eyes in a heavy soup or grease. Nor could he hear much beyond a murky burble every time he moved what with his blunted sentence. Every time he moved, what with his blunted sentence, he judged was his head. His first emotion was curiosity. The second, panic, followed quickly. His first emotion was curiosity. The second, panic, followed quickly, came from the sudden surety that he and his cohorts had been drugged and packed in crates or some other strong containers and were now awaiting destruction. He waited too long, thought angrily. We knew how to multiply, but didn't. I, their leader, was tricked by the mealy-mouthed, smooth-talking minority Mogwai into delaying reproduction until the secret of greater size and strength was revealed. Now, too late, Stripe saw the fiendish logic of his adversary's strategy. With only 4 majority Mogwai, they were not only manageable, but could be trapped at some opportune moment and eliminated. But how could Gizmo and his human allies have drugged and imprisoned dozens, scores, perhaps hundreds of them? It would have been impossible. In waiting for greater power as opposed to numbers, Stripe had failed. Nearly deaf and blind, immobile, physically and mentally helpless. His main emotion was self-loathing at what his stupidity had cost them. As the shock waves generated by his thoughts coursed through him, Stripe thought for a moment that his physical presence shift. God, what is fucking God? Maybe one of these days, I'll get through it, Julie. I don't know if my voice can stop cracking. In waiting for greater power as opposed to numbers, Stripe had failed. Nearly deaf and blind, immobile, physically and mentally helpless. His main emotion was self-loathing at what his stupidity had cost them. As the shockwaves generated by his thoughts coursed through him, Stripe thought for a moment that his physical presence shifted. Was there not a soft white out-of-focus area ahead of him where there only gray had been before? Struggling to move toward it, but being unable to do so, he experienced new pulsations of frustration and anger. If only he could be free a minute, just a single minute of time, so that he could place one claw on the lower jaw of the creature called Gizmo, another on his upper, pause to enjoy the look of anguish and panic, and then pull, tear, and twist downward. That's fucked up, dude. Why would you hurt Gizmo like that, dude? Only if it's Howie Mandel's Gizmo. Not my Gizmo. Howie Mandel's Gizmo. Howie Mandel. Oh, I'm gonna start that beef again this week. Yeah, fucking Howie Mandel. Fucking told you, bro. Fucking told you, I'm the real Gizmo. You're in this stream, Howie Mandel. It's on, Gizmo off. The mental image brought Stripe pleasure.
but it was nothing compared to the joy he experienced a moment later. That was generated by the flash of knowledge that he could kill Gizmo. Yeah, exactly, man. How we don't want none of this. How we don't want none of this, Gizmo. I've been starting to beef. You may not have been here since the beginning, Andrew, but ever since I started Gremlins, I started this beef with Howie Mandel, and maybe he'll get in on it. Maybe he'll take me up. Maybe I'll interview Howie Mandel. Not in my house because he's a little germaphobe. My house is full of germs, except this room, except the library. Library. Where was I? Knowledge that he could kill Gizmo. Countless times before, he had tried to envision doing violence to it, but something inside his brain had invariably denied him even the pleasure of imaginary retribution. It was as if he thought was automatically short-circuited out of existence before it could be implemented. Now he remembered. Mogterman, that bungling do-gooder, had programmed his precious Mogwai creations so that they could not kill one another, or for that matter, even think seriously of doing it. Why, then, does Stripe now not only picture himself killing Gizmo, but know deep down that what he saw would not just be a mental image, but a certainty if they met again? There was only one answer. He was no longer a Mogwai. He could have leaped for joy. Stripe would have done that so at the very moment of recognition. What do you think that he is now? What do you think he is now? Background. Ghostly. Now his thoughts and intuitions were crystallizing, even as new developments were taking place in the physical realm. The white area could see a white area he could see ahead was definitely closer and brighter. Stripe became more conscious of having a body, as opposed to being a helpless blob suspended in liquid styrofoam. If he concentrated very hard, it seemed a possibility for him to actually propel himself toward the mouth of the cave, toward the light. Though its intensity tortured him, he knew this was a painful portal through which he must pass. He was moving more perceptibly now, definitely moving, though he he must pass. A rushing sound grew so rapidly it was deafening, competing with the growing light to regain control his agony. Must pass to be reborn. Suddenly, through a thick haze at first, and then with startling clarity, Stripe saw the room again: the bed, drawing table, drawn window shades, all the familiar things, and some unfamiliar ones. Notably, 3 huge pods surrounding him. Staring at them curiously, it took Stripe nearly a minute to realize that he himself was projecting from the top of the 4th huge wad. With the realization came to a new rush of panic. Could the 4 objects be carnivorous plants of some sort? Plants that even now were in the process of devouring him? Could it be that his rebirth was nothing more than a momentary escape from the jaws of this hungry plant? Struggling fiercely, he pulled his arms upward, twisting his shoulders like a cork being screwed out of a wine bottle, pounding rhythmically with his fists, sideways and down, up and sideways, until splat. Stripe's right arm shot like a rocket through the pulpy mass, rose high into his field of vision in a dripping wet salute of triumph. But what an arm! Surely it wasn't his. And yet it was. It moved, rotated, pointed according to the dictates of his mind. Looking at it, like a person slowly returning to complete consciousness after a long sleep, Stripe knew. The final piece of the puzzle was in place. Power and the strength had come. He took a moment to survey the imposing appendage raised above him, no longer ending in a soft, furry paw. The arm was nearly 2 feet long, rippling with muscles beneath a scaly skin ringed with white, green, and brown stripes. His arm seemed more an instrument of destruction than a commonplace tool for lifting and manipulating objects. Combination maul and trident, the heavily boned fist ended in 3 giant claws, each sharpened to a glistening point. I am no longer a Mogwai, Stripe thought. I am a gremlin. He had no idea now that he knew the word, just as he had no knowledge how or why the physical metamorphosis had occurred. Those details were not important at the moment. What mattered now was the feeling of power about to be fulfilled. Warming free of the pod, he stood next to it momentarily. Looking down at the rest of his new body, bouncing lightly on the tips of his enormous clawed feet, he savored the realization that finally, freed from the puny Mogwai body, he would be able to satisfy the urges that had tormented him so long. Best of all, he'd not only been reborn, but in the process had redeemed himself and his strategy. Shaking with anticipation, he looked intensely at the other pods. Hurry, 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 he hissed gleefully at them. We've got work to do. Great fun to enjoy. Damn, 14 is a longin'. Holy crapola. I think we were gonna get through 14. And we're gonna call it a daisy. Y'all have been awesome. A green mist was hanging gently over the broken pod, as if someone had sprayed a wintergreen aerosol there. No one actually had, but it could have used it. In Roy Hansen's opinion. I nailed that sentence. I just fucking nailed it. No one actually had, but it could have used it, in Roy Hansen's opinion. Whatever it was had just come into the world, had brought an unpleasant smell with it. Acrid, hot, faintly redolent of material scorched by an iron. He stood at the doorway to the lab, returning after having made certain no students remained in or near his classroom. At least no immediate explanation was needed, and now there was privacy to study what had been produced. Looking across the lab at the green glow, he hesitated. In the tub directly below the cloud of fallout material was the new product and the remains of its pod. He had taken only a few seconds to look at it before calling Billy. Wheeze! God, I am gaseous today. Call me Gaseous Clay. Very small. I'm having too much fun with this fucking. Looking across the lab at the green glow, he hesitated. In the tub directly below the cloud of fallout material was the new product and the remains of its pod. He had taken only a few seconds to look at it before calling Billy. That was all he needed to realize it was indeed no butterfly, but a potentially dangerous animal. The flash of teeth, fangs was a better description, had told him that. He could still see them in his mind's eye. 2 rows of widely spaced, finely sharpened teeth, framing the entrance to a huge, wide, blood-red mouth. The same color as the malevolent eyes that had flashed at him during his brief look at the beast. It was getting ready to make its first foray into the world. Bits of the pod were already on the floor and were being joined by others as the creature, whatever it was, churned relentlessly in the smooth metal tub. The basin wouldn't hold it very long. Hansen knew. Wouldn't hold it very long, Hansen knew, suddenly realizing he had no idea how to handle the animal or protect himself. Standing still, he looked around the room. The shades which he had drawn in order to keep the mogwai from crying out in pain gave him an idea. If the creature was afraid of light, Hansen would use this aversion as a means of protecting himself. At the moment, the lab was quite dark. If it got free, the animal would be at ease regardless of where it went.
Which is not a good idea,
Hansen said. He went to the light panel, and one by one flipped on the lights of the room's perimeter. When the outer rim was illuminated, he added lights to the adjacent interior areas, until he had created an island of relative darkness in the very middle of the lab. Surveying the scene, he felt more at ease. The safety of bright lights was less than 10 feet away in every direction.
Maybe I'm getting chicken in my old age,
Hansen muttered to himself.
but it's better to be safe than sorry.
He had already decided that he needed a blood sample to compare with the others he had taken of the parent creature. So he wheeled the cart containing his equipment to the edge of the light. In the case was a sterile container with dozens of samples of already sterilized hypodermic needles. After checking to make sure he had a pair of heavy gloves, Hansen paused again.
This baby won't be so easy to handle, he said. Maybe I better get a bribe.
Walking briskly out of the lab, through his classroom and into the hall outside the canteen, he bought a Snickers bar from one of the vending machines and started unwrapping it and returned to the lab. Then, pausing once again at the rim of the darkness, he smiled.
Hey, man,
he said.
Let's go. What are you, scared or something?
Pushing the cart to the tub, he looked inside. The animal was lying on its side, obviously still cleaning itself of debris from the pod before exploring further. When it spotted Roy, it fixed with a cold stare.
Hello, boy,
Hansen smiled.
How was your trip to Pupaland?
The animal regarded him with neither friendliness nor open hostility.
I figured you might be hungry after all that you've been through,
Hansen continued.
So I got you a candy bar.
He held up the bar, but the animal didn't reach for it. As he waited for it to make up its mind, Hansen studied the creature closely. He estimated that it was about 2.5 feet tall, a biped with incredibly long arms. The brown, soft fur of the mogwai had been replaced by dark, rippled armor plating that looked rock hard. Its paws and feet were now 3-toed claws, and along its back ran a ridge of armor, not unlike that of a prehistoric reptile. The only feature that remained in any way similar to the old mogwai was its nose, which remained pug and cute in the midst of a face that was notable for its malevolence.
Come on, boy,
Hansen urged, moving the candy bar closer to its mouth.
There's nothing to be afraid of.
Well into the darkened area, Hansen continued his line of matter, perhaps as much of his benefit as the animals.
See the candy bar? He crooned. Doesn't it look good? Come on, you better eat something, fella.
Putting his hand on the edge of the tub, Roy noticed a bit of movement at the base of the animal's neck. It had obviously gotten its first good sniff of the candy bar and was interested. Moving the bar forward, Roy released it barely a split second before a giant paw reached out to grab the delicacy.
Good,
Roy laughed, partly in relief that he had escaped in his hand intact.
You'll like it.
Slurping noisily, the gremlin began devouring the bar in a bite and a half. Hansen wished he had bought several more to keep it busy while he tried to get a blood sample.
I think you trust me now, so we'll trade. Candy for blood, okay?
Reaching gingerly into the cart, he slowly brought out a hypodermic needle and took a couple more steps closer to the animal. It continued to munch happily, and soon Roy was in position to reach out and get his sample. Lifting the needle from where he had hidden it alongside his leg, he made a quick movement forward. Fast as Roy was, the gremlin was quicker. At first sight of the syringe, his eyes narrowed, and the pupils glowed a fierce purple. My God, Hansen thought, it remembers. He did not have time to think further.
With a loud snarl, the gremlin hurled itself out of the tub in Roy's direction. One set of claws dug into the man's shoulder, while the other reached clear around his torso to enter his chest like giant staples. As he fell screaming to the floor, Roy Hansen saw that he was a good 5 feet from the lighted area. Gizmo's temperature rose every minute Lynn was on the telephone. Didn't she realize he needed to communicate with her? To tell her that the creatures upstairs must be destroyed? It was a terrible thing to consider, their destruction, but once a Mogwai entered the pod stage, Gizmo's loyalty to it, and its to him, ended abruptly. He had seen it happen before, as had the 3 other minority Mogwai on this planet, and the results were nearly always disastrous. The most recent episode, not caused by the spawn of Gizmo, had occurred late in 1983, when a single Mogwai somehow got aboard an American space shuttle craft Columbia. Because of strict government secrecy, details were never published concerning exactly how the Mogwai was allowed to reproduce, feed after midnight, and turn into a gremlin. In any way, the gremlin eluded capture by the 6-man crew long enough to shut down the computer handling the craft's guidance and navigation systems. When the scientists switched to the number 2 computer, the gremlin found a way to cause an overload. It then got into the system that senses the ship's acceleration, position, and angle of attack. Over the Indian Ocean, Columbia actually started falling out of orbit and was out of contact with mission control for 45 minutes. During that hectic time, the pilots and scientists managed to pursue the gremlin into a storage compartment and kill it. Returning to Earth 8 hours late as a result of the gremlin's meddling, the crewmen were debriefed by government officials, who warned them not to describe what had actually happened on the mission. Before that, a montage of gremlin-created or influenced events, some major and some trivial, rushed through Gizmo's mind. There was the Memphis runaway escalators of 1972, the 1969 Super Bowl, the East Coast power failure of November 1965, a lesser-known power failure a month later in Texas, New Mexico, and Juarez, Mexico, the closing in 1963 of the New York Mirror, a newspaper that simply could not get the gremlins out of its machinery, the 1962 collision of a runaway train, jet plane, and seagoing tanker at Danzig, Poland, the largest sea-air-land disaster in history. The Bay of Pigs paramilitary fiasco of 1961. The hilarious but potentially dangerous 3-day episode on the Anawa, Iowa buttonhole factory in 1957. The myriad antics of World War II all the way back to the complete disappearance of Vansk until 1936, the largest city in Siberia. Now it was Kingston Falls' turn, or so it seemed, but it did not have to be, yet. If Gizmo could somehow convince the Peltzers that locked doors and careful listening were not enough to... He heard a click, then a sliding around, which seemed to come from Billy's bedroom upstairs. Crouched at the foot of the foyer stairway, he listened intently for nearly a minute. But except for Lynn's chattering on the telephone, the house was quiet. He had just about convinced himself his imagination was playing tricks when a popping sound came from upstairs. Scurrying into the kitchen, Gizmo was forced to pull up short, spinning like a top on one paw when he reached the counter. He looked around nervously. Lynn had hung up the phone and was no longer in the kitchen. Nor was she in the pantry, basement, or anywhere else on the first floor. Was it possible she had gone upstairs without Gizmo seeing her? Climbing onto the kitchen's counter, he looked out the back window. Shading his eyes carefully, he spotted her then, at the far end of the yard, throwing bits of old bread to the birds. She was in a habit of doing this, especially when the ground was covered with snow. But didn't she realize leaving the house today simply was not a good idea? There's not much I can do but wait, Gizmo thought, watching the ballet of stark black pecking forms against the white backdrop. A moment later, another sound came from upstairs.
much louder than the first one. Hurry, hurry, Gizmo called to Lynn in Mogwai words. We need you back here. Performing her task with infuriating slowness, Lynn showed no sign of coming back. Gizmo gnashed his teeth, pounded on the window with his tiny paws. The light from outside caused him intense pain, even though it was late afternoon on a cloudy day, but he forced himself to continue rapping. Sklirk, Wump, my name is Gizmo. I like to rap. Yeah, that's Wizmo. More sounds from upstairs. With a final angry glance at Lynn, Gizmo hopped down from the counter. Something had to be done. What he knew not. What? He knew not. But at the very least, he had to know if the gremlins had come out of the bedroom or were still in the post-metamorphosis stage. Moving quickly to the base of the stairs, he looked up into the hallway outside Billy's bedroom. Was the door open a crack, or was that just the way the shadow fell? He waited, one ear cocked in the direction of upstairs, the other towards the kitchen so that he could not miss Lynn's return. The long silence continued. As he waited, Gizmo considered methods of thwarting, or at least delaying the gremlins once they began their offensive of mischievous destruction. As experience told him they soon would. The key, in his estimate of the situation, was the bedroom door. Until it became very dark outside, the gremlins would not attempt to escape via the windows. That left only the door, which, although locked, was by itself a slim reed against the storm. But if another obstacle could be placed outside the door, an obstacle such as fire, of course. But how could he make it happen? Gizmo's brow furrowed as he thought furiously, trying to conjure up memories of how, and then he had it. Wasn't there a container of something in the father's workshop? Thinking no further, he headed for the basement, several times spinning at the corners as his whirling paws slid on the kitchen tile floor. Momentarily, as he sat recovering from a nasty slide in the kitchen, he considered taking another look outside for Lynn, but he soon decided that could wait. The important thing at this moment was to locate the container and, as he recalled, something to which to ignite the liquid. Lynn came in by the time he found what was needed. Gizmo could make her see what he had in mind. If she remained outside, he would tackle the dangerous but necessary job alone. Determined now, and buttressed by a certain fatalism, he negotiated the basement stairs, 2 at a time, until he was 5 from the bottom, at which point he fell headfirst the rest of the way. Shaking himself, he got up, raced into the workroom, climbed onto Rand's bench, and studied the array of cans, jars, and bottles stacked on the shelf above it. Straining to remember the configuration of foreign letters and colors on the can, he finally found it, and without too much difficulty, got it down. It read, lighter fluid. The words meant nothing to him except the important fact that instant fire was produced when a match touched the liquid. Easily locating a pack of matches, Gizmo began the ticklish task of trundling up the basement stairs with his cargo. Arriving at the kitchen counter, he dropped his load, climbed a stool, and peered outside once again. He did not see Lynn at first, which caused hope to rise in him that she was already at or near the door. A moment later, however, he spotted her, farther away than ever, talking with a neighbor. Shaking his head angrily, Gizmo hopped off the stool, grabbed his weapons, and began the ascent to the upstairs hallway. 2 steps from the top of the stairs, he paused, listened, and once again studied the door from a much more advantageous perspective. It did seem to be open a crack. Was it always that way in the locked position? Or, dismissing the thought from his mind, lest it deter him from continuing his mission, Gizmo crawled onto the landing with his gear. Fortunately, the heavy carpeted stairs and hallway deadened any sounds he might have made under less favorable circumstances. Carefully unscrewing its top, Gizmo laid the lighter fluid can on its side, aimed the opening at the floor just below the door, and pushed. The wall of the container yielded to his weight, propelling a thin stream of liquid onto the general vicinity he hoped to saturate. But immediately after, it flexing back to its original shape, the can made a hideously loud snapping noise. His mouth agape. Gizmo stood frozen to the spot, his paws unable to leave, as lead unmovable as lead ingot. His little paws. Even when he heard heavy footsteps on the other side of the door coming toward him, he could not move. And then the door opened, revealing a leering gremlin face topped with a mane of coarse white fur and a gigantic 3-taloned hand, which quickly and roughly encircled his tiny body. Fucking Spike has got him. Holy shit. With this sweet Batman Man on Fire. Batman Returns. This is a really good. Wow. Holy wow. Shit's about to go down, my friends. Shit's about to. Dun dun dun. Imaginary rivalry. It's not imaginary. Is it imaginary? You know? I like that. I have a good feeling too. I have a good feeling too that he's aware of this beef. Yeah, it's just about to go down. About to get to that point. Got to stick around till next week. See, imaginary rivalry. See, I don't like that because that's, I'm not imagining it. So, it's not imaginary on my side. And Howie knows, obviously. So, like, shit. I'm about to post this on Howie Mandel's page. I bet he would actually respond because he's a weirdo. I might do that. That would be awesome. I would take some Howie clout. I'm down with that. So my next project, Evan, this has nothing to do with that, but yeah, I'm going through this Herschel Gordon Lewis's Feasts. You can't tell because I have my chroma key. Looks off. I feel it. Feels real to me. At that full, yeah, man. If it feels real, it is, bro. Yes, I watched Blood Feast and Scum of the Earth yesterday, and started to watch 2000 Maniacs. Yeah, that's a hell of a film. According to Herschel, it's his favorite movie. Oh, wow, these really cool. Okay. I like it. Blood Feast. 1000 Maniacs. I'm looking forward to never seen something weird. Oh my god. And the gruesome twosome. Oh, he's really cool. Yeah. 2000 Maniacs. Not as good as 1 million Maniacs. Dude, join me on my we love shitty drive-in horror around these fucking places, man. One of my favorite trilogies of all time is the Basket Case trilogy. If you're not aware of those, my friend. Oh my god. But yeah, I just picked this up the other day. This is the HGL collection. 14 HGL movies, including She-Devils on Wheels, Just for the Hell of It, The Wizard of Gore, This Stuff Will Kill Ya, The Gore Girls. I haven't seen something weird. I've seen some of these. I'm gonna go through them all, and we'll watch them, and I'm gonna tell you all how it is. Love you guys. Thank you. My God, this stream went so much better than last week. Fuck.
I think it was probably like being just totally like just worn the fuck out from the week the weekend before doing the whole yes, yes, it is the guy who did Frankenhooker. Uh name's Frank Henenlotter, and oh man, dude. Frank Henenlotter's the man. He is all about the just the wild body horror and goodness. Yes, Frankenhooker is I love that. Yes, Basket Case is also check out It's Live. Frankenhooker. That guy, the guy that is in that movie, so awesome. He's also in Street Trash, and actor that is in Frankenhooker steals the show in Street Trash. This front end like bookie dude, freaking awesome. He does that Brooklyn talk, that fast talking Brooklyn shit. Yeah, man. Andrew, if you're gonna be doing it. Yes. Oh, it's such a good one, man. It's so good. Yeah, the Joe Bob did Street Trash last year. That was awesome. Found an old cut box version of it. Yeah, exactly. Yup. Last drive-in, bro. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. Last drive-in. I actually got to go and meet Joe Bob last year, and it was fucking awesome. God. He came to the Alamo Draft House and did his show, his like How Redneck Saved Hollywood. Go see that shit if he fucking comes around anywhere around you, man. If you need to know how hardcore I am about this show, go show my ass. So not actually showing my ass, but yeah, dude. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. This was done by my buddy, and he came with me. I actually got him to sign a copy of the Howling 7, Bad Moon Rising, and he's like, "What the fuck, man? What the fuck are you doing having me sign this stupid piece of shit?" I'm just like, and yeah, that's what I'm fucking doing. Good ass man, fucking awesome. Darcy's amazing. She's just as beautiful in real life. She was there too. That's fucking. Of course she was. It was in North Carolina. She's still Carolina girl. Hell yeah. When Joe Bob comes back on, I think it'd be fun to do like a little thing, dude. We like to zoom the Joe Bob, man. So, oh yeah, yes, we like to zoom and do the Joe Bob thing, man. So we'll invite you in there, Andrew. That'd be fucking awesome, dude. That would be fucking amazing and awesome. So I'm gonna try and yeah. Yes, watch party. Yes. I'm down to do watch party. Fuck yeah. I just need to figure out how to do that. Figure that all out. For now I could do some like VHS watch parties on here. I can host them. Stuff like Getaven. We'll see what happens. We will see what happens in the future. Right now I am my voice is worn out, and I would just show y'all playing my video game. I'm about to play some Fallout New Vegas. Y'all, I'm going old school with the New Vegas. That New Vegas vibe. Got my dog over here trying to screw up my stuff. My stream. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andrew. Good seeing you, my friend. Thank you for coming. Need help with your YouTubing? and stuff. Let me know. Love you guys. See you soon. I'm gonna try and figure out something else during the week. I think I talked about this, but it's been a matter of like fucking yeah. Yeah, it's just been a matter of like trying to figure stuff out and figure out what I can do. Yeah, man. Good seeing you, buddy. Good seeing you, Julie. Thank you. Thanks for the support, everybody. See you next Monday, part 5. Oh, Gizmo just got snatched, so better fucking come back. Later, y'all.